welcome to another episode of the Kid Stories Podcast. I'm Phil Bechtel. Before we get started, here's a quick message from a podcast I really enjoy called the Integrated Schools Podcast.
I'm Andrew, a white dad from Denver.
I'm Val, a black mom from North Carolina.
And we host the Integrated Schools Podcast, where we dig into topics about race, parenting, and school segregation.
These conversations strive to live in the nuance of complicated topics. And while that can be uncomfortable, we keep having them because they help us make better choices.
Not only for our own kids, but for all kids.
Listen to the Integrated Schools Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
And now for a quick joke.
Hi, this is Louie from Wendell, Massachusetts, and I'd like to share a joke. What do you get when you cross a tiger in a blizzard? Frostbite.
Frostbite. Great joke, Louie. Thanks for that. I want to give a shout out to Emily, who made goofballs. And she sent me a video where she had toppings all laid out and chocolate sauce for dipping. It looked amazing, and I think it's so cool that you did that, Emily. I think if you were a character in the Valley, you'd be a magical baker who makes goofballs that give you powers. Like some goofballs would turn you invisible for a little bit, and the spicy ones would let you breathe fire for a bit. Thanks for listening, Emily. Today's episode is titled Too Much Magic, Part 6. I want to again thank Owen and Liam for the ideas that brought this story to life. You are both very creative storytellers, and I hope you keep writing. Liam, Owen, and Renner again sat in the kitchen of Halva's little farmhouse. The pets rested out in the barn. "We can't sneak in," said Renner. "Not with the pets. Word travels fast, and at this point, most people know about you. We'll be spotted instantly. Also, it's probably safe to assume that Mondo knows what we're after," added Liam. "He probably knows we're going to hit the museum to steal the warp crystals, so he'll be there with his henchmen." "I think our only option is a good old-fashioned smash and grab," said Owen. The others agreed, and they spent hours reviewing the details and dangers of the heist. The next morning, they were ready to go. Halva wished them luck, and they were off. Renner led them over the countryside toward the city. Soon they could see the tall buildings, and the roads leading into the city were thick with merchants and tourists. Eventually, wagons and large groups clogged the road, so Liam and Owen all guided the horses off-road and sped into the city with Kylo and Element easily keeping up with the horses. Liam and Owen followed Renner through the congested city streets as fast as they could. Crowds grew as they neared the city center, and their progress slowed. They could hear passers-by taking notice of their presence. "Is that the group that faced the beast in the diamond mines?" "Those are the brothers who stole from Mondo." By now, everyone knew of the two strangers with wild pets who had been adventuring in their land. They finally reached the museum, and Renner jumped down from their horse, leaving it right there on the sidewalk. Liam and Owen did the same, and Kylo and Element followed them into the museum. Now, gasps and shouts of surprise rang out as people in the museum noticed a two-headed dragon and a cold blue cheetah walking among them. Renner led the group upstairs to a room full of ancient gems and rare artifacts. There was a table in the middle of the room with a heavy glass cover. Renner nodded in its direction, but before they reached it, two guards stopped them. "You can't have animals in here," one of the guards yelled. "Especially not a whatever that is. Get 'em out of here." Liam stepped up to the two guards and said, "I'm sorry about this. The effects will wear off in an hour or so." The guards looked confused, and Liam lifted up his hand to reveal a bright red stone. The guards looked at it while they readied their weapons, unsure of what was happening. The red stone flashed, and the two guards blinked. "What is this wizardry?" one guard yelled. I can't see a thing!" The other guard dropped his weapon and held his hands out in front of him as if walking in the dark. "Guards! Guards!" The two blinded guards now yelled out for more guards. Liam calmly pocketed this magic stone and continued to the table. Most of the museum visitors had run off. Liam, Owen, and Renner all looked down through the thick glass to the warp stones below. They swirled with color and sparkled with light as if they were bursting with energy. Renner then began to examine the table to see how to get at the stones beneath the glass. A moment passed, and stomping and yelling echoed up the stairs and into the room. Liam and Owen turned, expecting more guards. Instead, they got Mondo, stomping toward them with some of his own goons following. Mondo roared as he entered the museum room. "Better hurry that up, Renner," yelled Liam, as he leaped to stand right in front of Mondo. He revealed the bright red blinding stone and held it up, hoping Mondo would gaze into it. Instead, Mondo used his long reach to smack Liam's hand, and the stone went flying across the room. Mondo lunged forward with both arms outstretched, hoping to grab Liam in a bear hug. Liam held his ground, and Owen leaped in to intercept, smacking Mondo in the face with the broad side of his sword. "Ella, now!" Liam called out to his two-headed dragon, and it began spewing stone in a circle all around the table holding the warp crystals. Renner frantically continued working on the table, looking for a way to remove the thick glass cover to get at the warp crystals below. They became frustrated, however, and revealed a hammer and took to bashing the glass. Mondo's guards circled the table and blocked the exits. Kylo growled and snapped at the guards, trying to subdue Renner. The guards kept their distance, trying to avoid the vicious ice cheetah. But Mondo and his goons had them all trapped.
"You thought you could get away from Mondo?"
Mondo yelled.
"Ah! You're finished!"
Mondo barreled toward the center of the room, looking to smash everything in his path, including Renner and the warp stones. Liam and Owen each slid down and kicked at Mondo's feet as he rushed by, hoping to trip him up. His weight and momentum, however, kept him going. Element took a quick break from spewing a barrier of stone and swatted at Mondo with her strong dragon-scale tail. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it was enough to knock him off course, and he crashed into a wall across the room. The battle continued, with Owen, Liam, and Kylo fighting to keep Mondo and his thugs away from the warp stones. Element continued building a barrier of fused stone around the entire table where Renner was working. The barrier got higher and higher until it resembled a stone igloo. There was a hole in the top, and Element was quickly filling it to completely seal off her and Renner and the table of warp stones. "Owen, we gotta go!" Liam hollered while struggling among Mondo's men. Owen leaped into the top of the stone igloo, and Kylo followed. Liam flipped a small capsule over his shoulder. When it hit the ground, a bright flash filled the room, distracting Mondo and the guards, while Liam jumped into the shrinking hole in Element's structure. A second later, Element, the two-headed dragon, finished completely sealing everyone inside the stone igloo. It was pitch black inside, and Liam lit it up with some bright dust. Renner was bashing away at the thick glass of the table. It was cracked and crumbling, but the warp stones still lay below, out of reach. Loud booms filled the stone igloo, and Owen, Liam, and Renner cringed as the sound echoed and hurt their ears. Mondo and his men bashed at the stone igloo from outside, trying to break in. "It's not opening," said Renner, "and it's harder than I thought breaking into a museum-grade exhibit stuffed into a tiny stone igloo with all of you." Renner no longer had the ability to hammer away at the table since the space was so tight. "Hang on," said Owen. He slid under the table and began jabbing his sword into the wooden underside. "Kylo, come here." Kylo joined Owen under the table and slashed away with his super-sharp claws. In just a moment, the bottom of the table was shredded to pieces, and the warp crystals fell onto the floor. They hummed and sparkled with energy. At first, Owen was afraid to pick them up. Renner reached down. They laid out the obsidian bracelets and the diamond ribbon and the warp crystals onto a piece of soft cloth on the floor. Liam and Owen watched as Renner picked up an obsidian bracelet and placed a warp crystal upon it. Renner ripped off a length of diamond ribbon and wrapped the ribbon around the crystal so it was stuck in place against the obsidian bracelet. When Renner did this, something strange happened. The warp crystal reacted with the diamond ribbon and the obsidian bracelet and began to spark. The diamond ribbon, normally bendable and light, appeared to harden and tighten itself around the bracelet. Owen picked it up, and it was warm and vibrating gently. "Put it on," said Renner. Owen slipped it over his hand onto his wrist and immediately felt a surge of energy as goosebumps covered his arm. "Whoa," Owen said. As Renner began putting together a second bracelet, the floor began thumping and booming below. The wooden floor splintered, and a spear stuck up from the floor by their feet. "Oh no, they're coming at us from the floor below," said Liam. Element had spent so much energy creating a giant stone igloo, and she was not going to be able to produce anything else without some rest. Kylo leaped back from the sharp spear tip sticking up from the floor. The ice cheetah hissed at the spear, and a cloud of ice froze it in place. The booming on the outside of the stone igloo continued, and bits of pebbles broke off and rattled to the floor. "We don't have much time," said Owen. "They're going to be on us in minutes." "Here." Renner tossed Liam a second bracelet. A moment later, Renner finished the third bracelet and slipped it on. They each stood now in their crumbling stone igloo, with spears and swords cutting in from the floor beneath them. At any moment, Mondo and his goons would be on them. "So, what do we do now?" Liam yelled to Renner. "I've never used one," yelled Renner. "They just say you guide it, like with your mind." The booming was so loud now that they could barely hear each other. Cracks and little holes appeared in the stone around them. Liam and Owen shared a look. They closed their eyes and thought of the valley. They thought of the void of black and the colored stars, and just as the floor beneath them was hacked to bits and the stone igloo around them began to crumble, their vision and the air around them rippled with a strange energy, as if invisible waves flowed through them and all around them. Their warp bracelets hummed, and it got so loud it was like a shrieking sound, and the colors and things around them ripped open like invisible hands were tearing a hole in their reality, and they were sucked right into the hole, flying and sliding in a void of black space with colored stars in the distance. Element, Kylo, Renner, Liam, and Owen all whipped about, seemingly out of control. Liam and Owen thought as hard as they could of the valley. They thought of the exact place where they were sucked up into the rift after the Red Cloaks battle. They pictured themselves being dropped out of another tear in reality and dropping right there on the ground. And after sliding and whipping about as if they were on an invisible roller coaster, they took deep, sharp breaths and slammed into the grassy hillside. The impact shook them all, and they lay there for a bit, catching their breath and looking around. Liam and Owen recognized this place immediately. The wall of jungle in front of them was the border of the southern swamps. They saw Valley Town in the distance and some other small villages. "Are we here?" asked Renner. "Are we back in your home?" "Yep," said Owen. "And I guess it's your home now too, huh?" Renner just looked around at this new place without saying much. Kylo and Element cuddled each other and panted, happy to be back in a place they knew well. "Say, you guys mind if I kick around with you for a bit?" Renner asked Liam and Owen. "I don't really have any prospects, or money, or food, or anything at all." "Yeah, we'll get you set up," said Liam, "but no more stealing." Renner just said, and grinned. Owen started off across the open field, and Liam called after him. "Hey, where are you going?" Owen turned back. "Goofballs, I'm starving," he said. And Liam, Renner, and the pets ran to catch up. The end. Thanks for listening, friends. Just a quick note. Drawings submitted by listeners will now be posted in videos to the Kid Stories Podcast social media channels, as well as included in the Kid Stories Podcast newsletter, which you can sign up for on the website, kidstoriespodcast.com. Adios.